All right, so to start off today's lesson, a quick review of what we mean by target markets. Now, everything leading up to this has helped us identify that specific group of customers that a company will direct its products and services to, highlighting the idea that it has to be specific and focused. When we market or when we try to sell or when we try to brand to everybody, we end up selling or marketing or branding to nobody. Well, so the question is, well, so what? Okay, so I've identified this target market. Well, what do I do with it now that I have this specific group of people broken down by age and location, income levels? What am I going to do with this information? All right. Well, that's where marketing comes in. And now what we have to do is, with that target market in mind, we have to put the right product in the right place at the right price at the right time. We have to have all four of these components in place in order for us to have a successful business venture. Right? So to start, let's think about a company that many of us are familiar with, Gatorade. And think about all the different products that a company like Gatorade has. A sample of the few items you can see here on your screen. So take a moment and answer some of these questions about Gatorade. Why does Gatorade have so many products? Are they all for the same customers? And do you think they sell for the same price? If not, why? Take a moment and pause the video and think about these products. All right, so the focus of today's lesson is going to be on something called the marketing mix. And also, I guess commonly referred to as the 4 Ps of marketing. And those Ps are product, place, price, and promotion. Right? Now, what I want you to do here is open up a new tab in your browser and pause the video and go ahead and type in that URL. That's going to take you to your learning targets for this lesson. And just like we've done in the past, take a moment and do an honest self-assessment of where you're at right now in terms of your ability to do the things that we will be asking you to do during this lesson. All right, so pause the video and go to that URL. Okay, now before we get into a little bit more detail about what the marketing mix is and the components of it, let's look and see what would happen when companies don't use the marketing mix correctly. Sometimes it's we can learn a lot about when we look at bad examples. Okay, all right. So I'm going to introduce you to Joe. All right, Joe lives in Average, Illinois. Joe earns an average salary at an average job. Uh, his day is pretty average. He wakes up, he goes to work, he comes home, he cooks dinner. Maybe occasionally he goes out to eat, but most days he packs his lunch, likes to cook at home. Like I said, occasionally we'll go out to eat. Enjoys outdoor activities, woodworking, spending time with friends and family. All right, so Joe is a pretty average guy. All right, so let's introduce Jumpstart Coffee House. All right? Jumpstart Coffee House is a new, relatively up and coming or growing coffee brand with known for their strong, bold flavors. They're also known for their all organic, eco-friendly farming and brewing process. So they really take pride in not only the flavors of their coffee, but the process that they go through as well. Sold mostly online, but there's one retail store in downtown Chicago. So they are what we would refer to as mostly a direct-to-consumer purchase. They're big on social media, and they use social media to connect to their customers and promote their business. And they are priced to compete with brands like Starbucks and some of the other premium brands, Intelligentsia and things like that. Okay. Now, the reason why we bring these two people together is, as I said, it gives us a look at what happens when businesses do not have the correct target. Right? Everything that we learned about Joe was kind of average. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. But clearly, we can see that a company like Jumpstart Coffee House is not interested in the average person. Okay, what we know about Joe and we can connect to each one of the P's in our marketing mix. So, for example, knowing what we know about Joe, does he sound or feel like the person that would pay for Starbucks level or Starbucks priced coffee? Maybe not. Um, so we have to think about, does Joe, is he interested in the organic and the eco-friendly, all natural coffee? Maybe not. Think about where these things are sold, where the coffee is sold. It's mostly sold online, and there is one retail store in Chicago. Does that align with where Joe lives? Probably not. Does Joe seem like a person who's going to connect with businesses on social media? Well, maybe, but from the Jumpstart Coffee House uh, perspective, there's probably better ways, or there's probably different ways that Joe is connecting with businesses than on social media. Right? So when there's a disconnect between any of these and the target customer, uh, it lessens our chance of being successful in our business venture. All right. So let's break down the 4 P's a little bit more. So the first one is product. Now, that is the actual physical product itself. What need does it satisfy, or what a want does it fill for the customers? But also, what about the packaging and the brand name? What is the image I want my product to project? So 2 things here on this slide. One, think about some of these ad icons that we've seen. With Tony the Tiger, the Michelin Man, the Pillsbury Doughboy, Ronald McDonald. What image do they want, or what images do these companies want their products to project? And also think about the iPhone and Apple products. So product is not just about the product itself, but it's also about the packaging and the display. How is it sitting on the shelf? Apple has done a really good job of making their products very nicely packaged. You almost feel like guilty about throwing away the box that your iPhone or that your Apple Watch might come in. All right, place. Place is simply asking, where will my product be sold? Am I going to sell it in a specialty store? Am I going to sell it in mass merchandise places like Walmart? A department store, maybe like Kohl's or Macy's? Am I going to use a boutique shop or a store where I only sell a specific brand of clothes? Or am I going to have a store where I only sell my own products? A company like a retail store like J. Crew or Lululemon or something like that, they have retail stores that only sell their brand of clothing. Tesla here on your screen is another good example of not only thinking about where my products be sold, but what does that say about the product? Okay, you can only buy Tesla at Tesla dealerships, or you can buy a Tesla online. You can't go to a dealership. So what does that say about the product? If there are products that you can only get at 1 or 2 locations, that tends to communicate a certain level of exclusivity or luxury associated with that brand. All right, price. Now, the price of a product not only says a lot about the product itself, but it also says a lot about the perceived value for the buyer, for the consumer. Pricing a lot of times come down to supply and demand. Gas prices are an example that are directly tied to the economics of supply and demand. But from a pricing perspective, businesses need to stay competitive, but they also must maintain profitability. While yes, it'd be great if everybody had the lowest price, or everybody was fighting for the lowest price possible, there's risk associated with that, and that the business may not be able to maintain profitability. The big question that comes is there prestige and ownership that will make the customer want to pay more? So brands like Nike and Starbucks and Shinola brand that we looked at, where I could probably get a very similar product, but it doesn't have that brand recognition. It doesn't have the logo. But we have to consider, again, we have to tie it back to our target market. Does our target market want to have that prestige in ownership? Okay? And then thinking about, again, what is the value to the buyer? If you price your product or if you start at a price that is considered inexpensive, your buyers are going to have a certain perceived value to that. If you have a little higher price, they're going to have a certain perceived value to that as well. All right, and the last part of the mix is what we refer to as promotion. Really, this is how do you get your product to your consumers or in front of your target market. So, what media will you use to promote your product? How will you launch your product? What will your promotional message be? So, look at a couple of these logos and think about some of their messages of these famous brands. I think the Campbell Soup one is a really good example where they really stress kind of the warm and kind of cozy home feeling associated with not just a can of tomato soup, but all Campbell Soup products. Okay. But really, it's I have to promote where my target market is. If my target market's on social media, I'm going to market on social media. If I'm targeting an older population that maybe isn't on social media but is watching network television, I'm going to promote and I'm going to try and get my product in front of my consumers that way. What are your consumers reading? What magazines? What websites do they go to? I really have to think about what is the best way that I can reach my potential customers. Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do with all this. There's an assignment posted along with this lesson on Google Classroom. It's called the Marketing Mix Product Analysis. So what you're going to do is you are going to pick that product that you had at the beginning of class, and then you're going to do kind of a product analysis within the context of the marketing mix for that product. Now, if you find that your product is kind of boring or something like that, you could certainly pick another one. But we want to stick with recent purchases and physical products, not necessarily food or a service. All right, and then what you're going to do is in each square, you're going to explain how each of the 4 Ps of the marketing mix connect to the target market, which will go in the middle. So there will be text box on there where you can fill in information about the product, the price, the place, and the promotion. And all of those should align with who your target market is.